Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton from My House to Yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. I am joined by Johannes, who is President and CEO of Note. Johannes, last time we spoke, as we both mentioned before we came on here today, was the depths of the pandemic, I think close to 2 years ago. You've just been on a bit of an amazing run over those 2 years, and you've just released some you continue to release impressive results. Tell me a bit about what's happened over the last 12 months and where Note is at the moment in terms of scale and size.
I think that I did some kind of a reflection yesterday. We were doing looking at the result from October internally, and we realized that run rate when we closed third quarter is basically twice the level that we had as a full year result of 2020. That at that time was our strongest year ever. So we have had 2 fantastic years after that. And last year we managed to get the second half of last year we had like 65% growth year over year, and we have attracted several very impressive and good new customer account, and we have gained more awards from the existing customer account. So we have managed to I would say satisfy the customer in such a way that we have been awarded a lot of more business, and we have continued to build on what we are good at. That means automation, increasing capacity, getting more products out with similar amount of headcount. We should also know that in these 2 years we have added maybe 20% in headcount while we have doubled in size. So I think that's where the key to our increased profitability comes from.
Yeah, no, it's amazing success, and when I look at it, it's been through challenging times, and when you look at the trends we've seen in the industry, if it had been maybe a more level playing field, perhaps you could have done even better. What I'm curious about is we seem to be seeing better numbers out of Scandinavia than we do out of the rest of Europe, and I know we're looking at that in terms of local currencies, and there are obviously currency fluctuations that have an impact, but Scandinavia just seems to be doing really well, and I'm curious why you think that is. Is it a different kind of relationship with the OEMs? Is it a more mature industry, do you think?
I think this is a bit of a tricky question to answer. It would be very simple to say yes, Scandinavian companies have suffered quite a bit from the long supply chains with the high level of production in Asia and also in Eastern Europe, and in the pandemic with the differences or the problems in the transportation chains, it has been a bit of a nightmare for some of our customers. So yes, they are sourcing back to more production in closer to their assembly units in Europe. But that's half the truth as I see it. The other is that Scandinavia is built up around a lot of new innovative industrial companies, and they are constantly launching new products, and they have now searched for supply closer to their home market instead of going to Asia. So I would say that most of the growth is coming from new products that are launched rather than resourced products. So it's a bit of a mixed picture, but I think Scandinavia, Sweden and Finland in particular are very strong industrial countries where they support a lot of this tradition of manufacturing of products. And that is what I would say is driving this. Then of course the weaker Swedish krona is good for us, because we become more competitive when you compare us to like China and Eastern Europe, where they have currencies that have gained maybe 15 to 25% in strength in 2 years. So that is of course also important.
Yeah, and I don't know, you just seem to be doing a very good job and have very good solid long-term partnerships with your customers, which I think is hugely valuable. You mentioned growing 100%, but actually only growing your headcount 20%. Obviously, automation is part of that strategy, and that's a strategy that you've employed to make you more competitive, to make you more profitable. But also it's one that combats the current concern around talent shortages. Are talent shortages something you're seeing in the vicinity of your facilities? And is that something that you're very mindful when you think of the kind of automation that you're acquiring?
I would say that we are located in very different surroundings. If you take our two largest sites, both are Swedish. One is in Norrtälje. It's like 70 kilometers north of Stockholm. Mm-hmm. And then we have Torsby, which is in the countryside, where there's very few people living. But two different complexities there. Torsby, we're the largest employer in the region, and therefore we can attract basically as many as they are getting out from school, because we also work with the schools to see who everyone that are interested in production are and so on. While Norrtälje, we are competing with the staff from Stockholm and so on. So salary levels are a bit different, and keeping talents are much easier in Torsby, for example. So that's one of the complexities. But I would say the biggest problem we have today is that we have 3 sites in UK, and the UK employee market is basically not functioning at the moment. The government is pushing up the minimum salaries, and that is ruining a lot of the salary structures that companies like us have had for some time. So UK is more problematic than any of the Swedish or sites that we see.
Yeah, I think the UK is a challenge. You know, as you know, I'm British. I've moved to the US. I now live in Australia. I left the UK in 2016, just before the Brexit vote, and everything that could go wrong seems to have gone wrong back in my home country since. So it's challenging, and the economy there is, I think, more challenging than most places. I was curious to explore where you are in terms of supply and demand. Obviously, there have been component shortages over the last year, and that may have constrained growth, although your growth has been impressive despite that. Do you think you had the opportunity to grow more had there been more component availability? Did that actually cause you any problems?
Definitely. We try to be transparent in our external reporting, and we have stated that we have more than 200 million Swedish in direct delayed products. That is products that we have confirmed to be shipped that we have not been able to ship due to component shortages. Then we have another, I would say, 500 million that we are in new programs that we have. When we got the orders, we have confirmed them later on, but the customers want them in the past, so to say. So we have, say, 500 to 700 million Swedish that we should have supplied already, and that would mean 20% more growth. But that would, if the market would have been open, it would taken off the extra sales we do on components, which would take out half the growth. So say that we should have done 300-400 million more if we would have had components at hand that the customer wants. That's basically what I see. So another 10% in the trailing 12 months is the loss there.
Yeah. And are you seeing that easing at the moment?
I have said that it should be easy.
That's what everybody says. Yeah.
But
some people tell me it's getting no better.
I would put it like this, that it's in average, it's getting better. We still have customers where we are facing severe problems, and we have production shutdowns for maybe 3-4 months on the main products because we don't get the components. And so then I talked to one of our sites and said, we have fully loaded, we have cleared kits for the next 8 weeks in our S&D lines. And then you say, okay, that site has now, the products there we have managed to get components, while we're standing still in another site. We have nothing to run in the S&D. So it's very, very mixed picture, but the average is getting better, even though it's slower than I have anticipated.
Yeah. So it means you have to be a little bit smarter and a bit more agile in your production planning, and perhaps some of that digital transformation with respect to enterprise level software systems has helped with that, do you think?
Yes, it has. We have worked a lot in these 2 years with connecting the different systems, and we have also worked a lot with warehouse automation to have faster setups. We have faster to pick the components, and normally when you look at setup times, you always look at the direct setup and don't even count how much time you spend on searching for components and loading the feeders, because you only look at the downtime in the machines. We have focused a lot of the indirect setup times and ensure that can be done faster. If we do that, we can do a lot more setups without adding people. So that has been one of our key challenges, in to automate that process as much as we can, and also to make the information more available at the planning part. So that has also been one of our focus, to get that a lot more transparent for the staff working here.
Yeah. And when you get that extra data, that means data available to you, but data available to your customers. It means you can have those tough conversations. They're tough anyway, Johannes, regardless of whether you've got answers for them. Some companies are telling me that it's actually made their relationships with some of their customers better. They've had lots of long open dialogue. That dialogue's very regular and very consistent, and it's making their relationship better. Not absolutely convinced it's doing the same on the supply side, but have you found that it's brought you closer to your customers? Your partnership has become stronger as you've been kind of working through these challenges together?
I would say that this is there's two different. This is a big generalization, so I'll start there. But two different kinds of customers: the ones that really understand the complexity of the electronic industry in this time. With those, we have grown much stronger relations. Then you have customers that may have a lot of mechanics and a very small portion of the product is electronics. They might not be as supportive as others, because they have a tendency of thinking that this is just an excuse for not delivering, and they don't. The management teams are not aware of how problematic the component shortages has been and what impacts it has. So I would say it's a two sides.
Polarized.
But most of our customers are very electronic oriented, and they understand it. So
the partnership works well, and you're working together to solve problems. Obviously, that's the supply side. On the demand side, are you seeing any softening at the moment? We're seeing, a lot of EMS companies are expecting a softening, but maybe haven't seen it yet, or are starting to see it in one or two industries, but not too many. What are you seeing in the market at the moment?
I mean, we reported just a month ago or so, and what we see is that we are facing a year with increasing demands. We reported like 50% increase in order backlog. Now we know that the order backlog in length has become longer, but in the plannable future, meaning 1, 2, 3 quarters ahead, we see very, very strong demand, and after that we don't see any softening. But then it's beyond what I call the normal planning period. But we don't see that. What I always say is that for us, it's the best that can happen is that it softens, so we get more component availability, so we can get all the delayed orders out. If we are in a perfect storm, that will compensate for the weaker demand, and when the demand comes back, we have no backlog, and then we can, so to say, work on with the growth. So we're very optimistic of next year, even though I know that it's going to be some customer will halve their demands, but we all have so many new programs that we have not been able to enter into production. So I'm actually looking at this and saying I think 2023 will be our absolute best year ever. That I've said the last 5 years as well, because every year has been that. But I think
and you've been right each time, and I think you're right. As we see perhaps that balance of supply and demand tip a little bit the other way, it will mean you can massively reduce that backlog. And the other attraction is you can reduce the huge amount of working capital that's being used in both work in progress and inventory. We spent decades in the industry trying to drive as much inventory out of our process as possible and maximize the number of turns. And just recently, we've very much moved from just in time to just in case. So I'm interested to see how those things will change. Have you seen many customers asking you to kind of relook at supply chain strategy and maybe shorten supply chains, or perhaps put some more alternative sources in the supply chains that give you greater protection for disruption? Or do they see this as temporary and they'll go back to normal after it's evened out?
This is also a very good question, because we talk a lot about this, that we need to close the time gaps and also start to source in what I call similar political areas. I mean, it's problematic today if you have a lot of dependency from, for example, Shanghai. That has been a region that have had a lot of lockdowns, and the lockdowns has been very long. And if you are dependent on that side, customers are getting quite nervous. But it should have came out more firm activities and resourcing of that, but it hasn't really done that. So I would say a lot of talk, but less activities.
Less action. Yeah.
And I think today there has been so much focus on just coping with your daily problems to get the next shipment out. So the strategic view has not have not gained enough attraction, as I see it. I think that will happen when the shortages are sorted out. Then the strategic part will come very close off. And I think there's a shift already today that we are moving more and more into that, because everyone expects the shortages to sort them out in the near future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think as that supply chain reaches balance, we perhaps see a bit of softening in demand. We see those backlogs getting fixed, and we see more availability of parts in the supply chain. It will maybe ease some of the panic, and people will be able to think a bit more strategically, not just in the EMS companies, but also in the OEMs. And people will review the supply chain. And I think geopolitics plays a big part in that now. And there's nervousness around, plenty of nervousness around geopolitics right now, which will impact the way OEMs think in the future.
Yeah, and if you read, there's a lot of reports that comes out and surveys saying that European manufacturing will grow extremely fast in electronics, because now European companies has been very good at sourcing at a low cost from China and surrounding countries in Asia. Now they are moving. If they don't move anything more out, they don't even need to resource it back, then production will grow significantly. And the last report I've said is that volume-wise, it will grow like 7 to 10% annually until 2030. And I believe that that's going to happen. Yeah. So production in Europe is looking extremely favorable at the moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I wrote a piece for, I think, Forbes or Entrepreneur magazine last year on the European manufacturing renaissance, and I thought it was a very opportune time to be manufacturing in Europe. And I think if you're smart about things like automation that allow you to not just mitigate talent shortages, but actually mitigate labor cost differentiations, it becomes more and more attractive to source locally, and just the reduction in risk. And personally, I think of it as a more sustainable business model, both for the environment and for the businesses and for the people that work in it. So shorter supply chains, I think, are good supply chains. I see that as taking complexity out and taking distance out has to be a good thing.
I agree. I think, and it's good for a lot of things, but then again, it's if the world moves into some of less international cooperation, that's going to be bad for the world in one way. But from transportation and sustainability, it's good, but it's gonna add new complexity and problems, but it will sort a few of them out. But I think that this globalization that we have been in, it's not going to continue in the same pace it has, because now we're looking at, transportation will become more costly in relation to the rest of the cost. That is certain, in my opinion. Yeah. And
so goods landed costs become differentiated as well. Yeah.
And also the CO2 footprint will be so much more important. If you launch, for example, an electric car, you don't want that to be produced in so many parts, so you have used up the savings that you do with having it electronically, use it up in transportation of products with diesel trucks, for example. So all that's gonna be much more merged into one piece in the future. And here we play a very important role to ensure that we can mitigate those pollution or emissions and so on.
Yeah. And I think that's an increasingly important part. It's certainly something that consumers care about. If the consumers care about it, the brands will care about it. And as a result, it will trickle through to the supply chain. I think globalization is one thing, but chasing low cost labor around the globe is something quite different and something that is definitely not sustainable. I think we've proved that. So I think good times ahead for the European market. Looking at your results and your predictions, good times ahead for Note as well. Thank you so much for talking to me. It's always a pleasure to chat. I look forward to updating next time, but